Namaskar, everyone, and welcome back to Everything Kosher. It's hard to believe we reached the finale episode of 2024. This year, we've shared so much together, diving into incredible stories, exploring meaningful topics, and celebrating vibrant Kashmiri culture. For our grand finale, we wanted to do something truly special. So we're taking a step back to reflect on an important part of our community's journey, us, KOA Youth. We've brought together all the KOA Youth directors from its inception to now on one episode. I like to think of it as like a Spotify Wrapped for KOA Youth, except instead of your top songs, we're rewinding through our legacy of our leadership, memories, and growth that have shaped this incredible youth organization. I'm hoping it's going to be nostalgic, inspiring, and of course, very kosher. So let's jump right into it with a round of intros. I'll kick us off. Everyone, let's go around saying our name, years we were youth director, and our favorite event. So I realized I did not say my name in the beginning, but my name is Siddhi Rana. I am currently the youth director, and I was onboarded as the youth director in 2022. My favorite KOA event, I would love to say it was Speed Dosti, but I'm pretty ironic, but
For
I'm
the
gonna
for the right reasons, huh?
for the right reasons, yes. But I honestly, I think the DC trip topped it. There were so many memories I took back, so many people I met, and it's just always going on a KOA trip or KOA youth trip. It just holds so much importance and meaning to me. But that was me. Let's see if we can actually go around in chronological order, starting with our founding Merji, Amrita. And then after that, let's see if we can remember who was next. And we'll go it. So I'll give the mic to Amrita.
Oh, thanks for calling me Merji. Doesn't make me feel old at all. But hi, and thanks for having me, firstly, and namaskar, Sarni. And um, it's like everything is like coming, it's all like nostalgic. I feel really nice and warm. My name is Amrita Kar, and what was the other question? So since when I was youth director, right? Um, Never, actually, because KOA as it is right now did not exist at the time I came in. And at that time, the thing was that the one of the board members would be a youth director, and that's it. So at that time, I think Manisha was the zonal director for Zone 9, and she was the youngest on the board, and hence she was the youth director. And so that was 2016, sorry, 2015. Um, Camp, the KOA camp, the annual camp which happened in Lake George, um, is when I actually saw like KOA because I was like new to the country. I finished my master's and I was like, okay, fine. I want to like meet with people, and that's when I kind of met KOA for the first time. So 2016-ish camp, and of course before that for like local picnics. To answer your question.
Yes, and then was that also including your favorite memory? Do you have any favorite memory of
Oh,
KOA?
favorite memory of KOA youth?
KOA, favorite memory, favorite event, whichever. Yes,
Um,
memory of KOA and KOA youth, whichever one you want to.
oh, okay. So I think right now what comes when Nisha is on the call, what comes to mind right now is our the calls for organizing the first KOA youth camp, which was at Poconos, which is I used to live in Pennsylvania, and I was like, okay, what's the closest? And Nisha and I had like 85 fights like in 1 hour. So there were not fights, but it was a process of getting to know each other and also like getting things together. I mean, I will defer to her like how because I think everything was new and we were getting to know each other. I come from like I was born in India. I'm new to the country. I don't understand like what's going on, and I'm trying to get to know it. So I think that memory stays with me because the bond that Nisha and I formed, and I was at her wedding and it was amazing. So it like I think that is a memory that I really cherish from where we were and where we have come. And that is KOA Youth. The interesting point is that whatever I have like we had organized, have not even attended one KOA youth camp, um, which I think, I mean, I was going through a certain thing in like my personal life, etc. But I was really happy that KOA youth was making progress and, we're growing, and now the Chicago camp, sorry, DC camp. So yeah, that is my memorable, KOA youth thing, and Nisha mostly because that was for me, KOA youth was Nisha. Nisha Kaspa. And so, that's one thing to like organize stuff with her. And with KOA, I think it was Kanchan, which was really helpful during the COVID times to like cook together. Yeah.
Thank you, Amrita. Now, who was next after Amrita?
Oh, it was Nisha Kaspa. It's easy, very easy.
Sorry. Hi everyone, Nisha Kaspa. I'm on video for the intro. As Amrita said, I was the director from 2016 to 2021, I think is the dates. It was really a pleasure. I enjoyed every single year, every single moment. And to Amrita's point, I developed a lot of great relationships with a ton of people, including Amrita and everyone on this call. My favorite memory was actually the first event that we did in the Poconos, because it was a lot of work. And we were like, I felt like we were shooting in the dark, kind of to some extent. Like, how many people will come? What will the cost be? Where will people sleep? People won't know each other. And we had like 25 people come, and it was really, really fun. A ton of fun just for like 3 days. And it was like the best experiment to realize like, oh, there is interest. Oh, we can do more of these. So much so that like after I left, you guys continue that tradition every year, and it's only gotten more people. Like my 25 trumps like sorry, your 60 at DC trumps my 25. And so that only is I don't know, when you guys said that you had like over 60 people at DC, I was like, damn, that's amazing, right? Like you guys, the whole point of like starting something like this is to see it grow, and you guys have totally outsized what we did, which is always what anyone who founds anything wants to see. So yeah, I think one was Poconos, and then the second is during the pandemic, we used to have these type of calls almost like every week. I felt like, and it was a really nice bonding experience. Like I think we were like 10 reps at that time, and um I don't know. I felt like we had our own little family. Like it was not just about KOA youth. It was like, hey, how's it going? How are you doing through the pandemic? And like, there was a special bond that was formed at that time that it's hard to talk about all at one time. But yeah, that's me.
Oh, I know. And fun fact, Nisha was actually one of our Jeopardy questions at DC. And this was the longest standing director. I can't remember whose team got it, but I remember they got it. So people know who Nisha Kasba is.
That's very sweet. That's very sweet. But credit to you guys for making it even bigger than whatever we had started. So thank you.
May I add that 60 was the number because it was a cap that they could handle, but there were more people who wanted to come.
Yes,
Of I know of.
We had over 60 attendees. We only had 60 living in our hotel, but we had like 67 or 68 like registered. But those eight we had to tell like we can't, like you have to find your own accommodation because we
That's
can't.
the best problem to have. So kudos to you guys.
On the streets. No, I'm just kidding. We had no one sleeping on the streets. But all right, who's next? Chronological.
That'd be me. So hey guys, I'm Rohit Raina. I was Zone 5 representative for many years, from 2016 till 2019. And then from 19 to 20, I was co-director with Nisha for about a year and a half. And in terms of just, I guess, my favorite memory of KOA, I didn't go to too many events going up, but the ones that I do remember, the ones that are my favorite, and overall were Chicago Camp in 2018. I had an absolute blast going up to the Midwest and seeing everybody for the first time. And then my favorite youth event was probably the Austin trip in 2019. And that was my first time kind of seeing a lot of kids my age that wanted to do the same exact thing. And so I thought that was pretty fun. I remember Nisha was there and we like destroyed the Airbnb and the host was like, you still can come back 5 stars. You did amazing, guys. And it was just a lot of fun. And it's just a lot of good times that we all had together. And I really appreciate the work that we've been putting in together. I know you guys have done a lot ever since COVID really, and you've taken KOA Youth to the stars, and I really love it. So I'm happy to see y'all are killing it, and I'm hoping for the best. So
All right, next is me. Hi, my name is
Oh,
Arushi.
whoa, whoa, whoa.
Oh,
Wait, whoa, whoa, whoa.
I forgot he was there.
Excuse me?
You're gonna have to edit that out.
Classic Arushi. For the viewers, just letting you know, this is
Wait,
just
no, no.
classic.
I fully forgot you were there. Like, I'm so sorry.
Hi everyone. My name is Shubhankar. I served as youth director for KOA starting at the beginning of the year 2021 until July East Coast Camp 2022. I took over from Rohit, and I was co-director with Nisha, with Umeka and Roshni. Umeka and Roshni unfortunately couldn't make it today, but they were wonderful co-directors. So I was started as Zone 3 rep of KOA in 2019, and then I became the youth director in 2021. My favorite KOA event actually was the very first camp I attended, which was in 2016 or 2017. It was my first introduction to KOA in the US. I was doing my undergrad at the time, and then in the summer, I think it was either Maryland or Virginia, I can't remember. It was just such a shock to see so many Kashmiris in one place, which I'd never experienced throughout my entire life. And I remember meeting Nisha there very briefly, and meeting so many Maryland grads over there. It was phenomenal. And then personally, the KOA Youth event that's my favorite is probably the language. We hosted a language event where we were teaching Kashmiri to a lot of folks, including some of our own KOA Youth board members who were attending to learn the language. And I remember I was teaching a South Indian who had been following our YouTube videos, and it was just such a heartwarming moment for me because language is such a critical part of our culture. So that was probably my favorite event.
And now, Arushi, go through.
Hi, my name is Arushi Kotru. I became a youth director with City this year. I started off in 2019 as a zone rep, and this year joined City as youth director. I would say that my favorite KOA event probably was our zone rep mini retreat that we did in 2021, because it had been about 2 years of all of us working together remotely on top of all the initiatives we started in the pandemic. We kind of went into overdrive in pandemic, and we're just churning out initiatives. And so it was really nice to meet together for the first time and not do KOA work and just hang out and celebrate everything we had accomplished since I joined and everyone else's work before that. So
Thank you, Arushi. That concludes our round of introductions. So before getting into our questions that I have for you guys, I do want to tell our viewers and you guys on call that I'm hoping we get to explore how you guys being a youth director or just like an integral part of this community when it comes to organizing or, promoting KOA's mission statement. I wanted to see how that kind of strengthened your KP identity. So I'm hoping you guys can kind of loop that back to being a Kashmiri Pandit in America, far away from home. How have you been able to kind of live up to your Kashmiri Pandit, your Kashmiriyat, let's say it like that. So I'll take another back step, and this is for everyone, whoever wants to take the question first. Kind of going back to our intros, the first question is, how did you first get involved with KOA and what motivated you to take on a leadership role as a youth director? So whoever wants to take the question first.
I can start. So a little history about KOA. KOA started in the DC, Maryland, Virginia area. So for me, being Kashmiri and being part of KOA was very synonymous, because most of the founders of KOA are actually people, are aunties and uncles that I grew up with. So like I grew up with KOA is how I would say. I think what made me do the youth piece of it was because I knew so many Kashmiris my age growing up, and there was always like
I would say the folks who are now like probably in their 40s, or like who are the teens when I was growing up, always used to hang out at camps. There was never a formalized KOA youth at that time, but they were like, I guess, the gold star, or like the leading star, because I'd seen that the people did hang out together, and most of them kept in touch through, like, at that time, like pre-email, through like, I don't know, phone numbers and so like just keeping in touch through these like informal meetings. So I knew there were a lot of us out there. There were just not a formalized way of communicating. And now with email and phones and text messages, it was just like, it was a no-brainer. And so when I was put in touch with Amrita and Nisha, it was like, oh yeah, like there are other people who want to start it and to lead it. And I was kind of like the homegrown American born Kashmiri who like knew everybody, at least on the East Coast, or felt like I did, but I was very wrong. There are so many more people. So it just made sense. I think KOA in my childhood and being Kashmiri was all like one concept. They weren't three separate ideas. And then I think the Poconos trip was like the perfect start to realize like there is interest, and from there it just grew. Like I would never have thought, for those who are on this or listening, like Arushi's from Alabama. Never in my like wildest dreams did I think I was gonna hear or know somebody who was a Kashmiri from Alabama. And like they're Kentucky, they're all over. Like we're all over. It's just a matter of like convening us, especially kids our age. And we have so many tools to do that through like social media, and so it just worked. It worked really well. So that was my start, I would say.
I can go next. Um, I think my involvement in KOA was to some degree the opposite of Nisha's, because I had no footprint in the US at all. I landed in the US for my undergrad, and then post undergrad, I was working in Columbus, Ohio. And honestly, I think what I realized is some form of community or nonprofit involvement was very important for me personally, especially at that stage of life. And it was through my parents where they suggested KOA, because my being in Jersey, my parents were quite involved in Zone 3. And luckily, Nisha and the team had at that time kind of molded KOA into what it should be and what it shouldn't be. And I came in to say, we're all remote, fantastic. I can take charge of Zone 3 where I feel at home, and help it grow. So my intention was just to kind of get involved and see what I can help with. Because for me, community involvement and cultural involvement was so important. And it I think was a really, really defining moment and experience for my Kashmiri identity. Like it prompted me to speak more Kashmiri at home, prompted me to get more involved in understanding what really it means to be Kashmiri. So that was my reasoning for getting involved.
How to get involved in KOA in general is very interesting. It's an interesting story. Um, I was in my biology lab doing my I was doing my master's, and I was in like the bio lab, and I walked through the corridor and I see Bamzai lab, and I'm like, okay, this must be a Kashmiri Pandit guy, so I need to find this person at some point. And one day I'm just walking by the corridor and I'm confused and I've lost my key or something like that, and I'm like really like confused, and there's this guy, there's this uncle who comes, and uncle as in professor comes, and he's like, "Hmm, are you all okay? I mean, are you fine? Blah blah." And then I see look at his long nose, and I'm like, he must be Bamsai ji. So I'm like, hello, are you Professor Bamsai? Everything is all right. He's like, yes, who are you? And I'm like, I'm this. And he's like, "Ate Sechak Pannikur." And then he took me to his office, and that's how I got introduced to KOA. I had no idea about KOA. And I was at Villanova University. He still works at Villanova. And I just spoke to him yesterday, actually. So he was my connection to KOA. And he introduced and he brought me to the KOA picnic that time. And he used to drive me around, whichever event, because I didn't have a car coming in. And so I came in, and then picnic, and then there's Sushma auntie, there's Rakesh. "Hatte Sechak Pannikur Sechak." Oh, we were related, found relatives, and you know how we are all related. And then then that's the beginning of KOA. And now I'm like very much part of KOA, and that was KOA. KOA Youth was basically how I got involved, and is like, so a little bit about me is that wherever I go in the world, so I was in Hyderabad, I was in Bangalore, I was like in different places, and wherever I go, I find like this KP thing. So I'm a very KP person. very, very Kashmiri person. So I'm like, kahan hai, where's the Rogan Josh at? So that's what I do. So with KOA Youth, when I was at Lake George, I figured that they were like, events for the elders, but the youngsters were like, "Timis dar gamit, timis aakho so ek skunas mas, timis skunas mas," and they were like doing their own thing on their phones or like just bored. So then I realized that there was like an opportunity here to bring everybody together, because I went with my non-Kashmiri friends because I didn't know anybody, but I wanted to go anyway. And I took them to I think I shared the pictures with you, Siddhi, about that dinner that I took them out to, and we all drove, and this was the first time. And then Sunilji was the president, and he basically was like, "Okay, fine, take them out." So took them out. We did the hibachi thing. It was really fun. And Nisha Munshi stayed in touch after that, and it kind of like came together a little bit. But there was not many people who actually continued after that from there, except for Nisha Munshi, who was at the Poconos camp, and and of course Nisha Kasba was not there at that time, but yeah. So this is how I got involved with KOA Youth. I think I answered the question, right?
Rohit, you had something to say?
Yeah, I think my experience was a little mixed between Shubhankar's and Nisha. Growing up, I never really went to any KOA events. The last thing that I personally, I couldn't even remember this. My mom and dad told me I went to like the camps where there were tents, like in 1999 and 2000. So, that was when I was like one or two or three. So I have no recollection of those events. But I grew up in Texas, obviously, and here we have a very big Kashmiri population. So much so to the point where we have our own little Kashmiri thing that we do at least once a year in March. And I look forward to that every year. And I'm 26 and I look forward to it still to this day. So that was my kind of thing growing up. And then I was in my dorm freshman year of 2016, and I get a notification from Sunil Fodder, and he goes, "We're making a youth thing." And he was like, "Get in touch with Amrita, get in touch with Nisha." And I was like, "Okay, sure, why not?" And then it just happened. That just kind of went with that. And I remember literally sitting in my dorm and I was like, "This is funny. What is this?" And so I remember we just kind of chatted and then kind of grew from there. And I grew to love it a lot because, like I said, my experience was more so my families and people here. And so now I was like, oh, there are people like outside of the state that know exactly more than me. And I thought that was fun and neat. And so my main experience actually, I could not give more praise to Nisha, is literally her. She shaped KOA to where I saw it grow up, and I worked with her for so long that for me, like I had seen KOA Youth as her, and so I would always look forward to meeting with her, talking to her, and just seeing what her ideas she had to do with KOA, and I would just kind of go like, yeah, whatever you want, I'm doing it. So I'm really really thankful for kind of being there.
Arushi, would you like to say anything?
Sure. So it was around like the summer of 2019, and I had just graduated high school, and my mom had forwarded me an email, and it was Nisha's youth newsletters that she would send out. And at the bottom it said Zone 6 Youth Rep opening, and my mom was like, "You should email her about this." So I sent her an email just saying I was interested in what the role was, and being Nisha, she's not going to waste any time. She was like, "Okay, join our next call this Sunday." And so I joined the call that Sunday. I think I had literally moved into my dorm that same week. And the rest is history.
I love that. I know by the time I joined, I know all of you guys have already played such an important part in KOA Youth that when I joined, everything had so much structure. And I was like, this is such an amazing organization. And then I remember talking to, I think it was Roshni. It was Roshni and Arushi, and they're like, there was no structure like 2 years before this. We were all over the place. And so I feel like I walked into the organization with so much structure. I was like, I have to make sure this structure does not fall apart. So thank you to all of you guys for everything you did. But what I did want to kind of follow up with, specifically with Shubhankar, is, well, the Shubhankar I know, you have lived in India, China, Japan. So you've been you're a global citizen in some parts. So you obviously had some Kashmiriness in India, then you moved to China and Japan. So, would you say, like, from the beginning, you kind of had any sort of personal passion for preserving the KP community? Or was there like a moment, like a realization for you where you realized that you should be actively involved? Like, what was that click for you where you're like, okay, I have a community near me, I should do something about it? Or like, when did this come in you?
Yeah, I think like ironically, I don't think that in India, China, well, specifically in India, I don't think I felt Kashmiri at all. And I think that's because wherever humans are, we try and latch onto what's the easiest form of cultural identity for us. And in India, the easiest form is you're Indian. And then, like, as a whole. And then, same when I moved out to China and Japan, it was too niche to consider myself a Kashmiri because there was no Kashmiri outside. And even though my parents were very Kashmiri, they just had no one to share that with. And so we had to just become Indian. And it was very hard for us to convince others or convey to others what being Kashmiri meant. And so it was honestly KOA when I started to become more actively involved and passionate about the cause. And when I first got involved with KOA, it wasn't because I was super passionate about KOA. It was because I had found a community where I could give back in a way. And then I think it was a few months in, I would probably say COVID, when when our first language initiative started, when we started, I remember actually, Siddhi, when you joined, it was a call where we were inducting new people interested into KOA, new reps, and the overwhelming support and diversity and interest in being Kashmiri that I received. I think in that moment is when it clicked for me that wow, like there are so many people who want to feel more defined as to what their identity is, and we are providing a channel for that. And there are so many ways in which we are able to support that. So that is for me that time during early COVID when we were receiving so much social media inbounds about I want to be involved, I want to know what it is to be Kashmiri. That's when I felt really, really connected and where I started to put in a lot more effort.
And thank you for that. Would anyone else like to join in? I did want to call out Rohit, I don't want to call you out, but I do want to say, like, for folks, at least what I have observed during the 1990 genocide, I feel like folks who've had direct impacts in their family, they have some sort of, you know, like blood rushing, well, at least I'm talking about myself. Some sort of blood rushing commitment that, I should be doing this for my community. I should be talking about being Kashmiri. Like it's kind of, I don't want to say like it's my responsibility, but it kind of sometimes feels like that people should know about this. I'm not saying people who haven't had direct impacts don't feel this, but Rohit, I wanted to ask you, like, having lost your Nanu in this genocide, like, did you feel some sort of, when like KOA was introduced to you or when you found out about it, did you feel like, okay, I should do something about it? I know you're pretty active on social media, but like, did that kind of play into like why you became a youth director, or like why you post on social media? Like what kind of pushed you to kind of be as open and put yourself out there for the public to know your history, your family's history, and who you are?
That's a really good question. I'd have to think this through, but um, I'll kind of just walk you through my thought process from when I started. And like I said, my only community experience was just Texas, really. I have a cousin in the East Coast, and that's pretty much all I had. And when I came into college, I was just like, okay, let me join and see what I can do for my community in some way. Because for me, the one tie that I have is language, and I speak it fluently. And for me, I was like, I would love to see if I can put this to use. So that's kind of how I started. I never approached it with an activism lens until about a few years into it, around 2019, 2020, and that was when Ajay Pandita got shot in Kashmir and was killed. And I don't know, that day, like something just flicked in my head, and I was like, I need to use my voice for a better purpose, not just for planning a 1 year event for the youth community or want just like helping Texans come together, or just talking to my fellow board members. I vividly remember coming home because I was at the mall when I saw it was like on Twitter. I was scrolling and I saw that he was murdered. And I came home and I sat down in this very chair and I cried. And then I was like, I need to do better. And I just literally opened Twitter and I just wrote what I could write. And I posted it and then it blew up and I was like, I'm gonna do this as much as I can. And I was like, Siddhi help me or Nisha help me or somebody help me with extending this as much as we can. And that's kind of where it was. And so that at that point, that's when I realized like this is more than just me. This is more than just my mom's story. This is more than just my Nanu's story. This is everybody's story. Siddhi, you yourself have gone through something very similar, and all of us have gone through something very similar ourselves. Um, and it's like there's more, there was more to it than just myself. I know we all have our own disagreements. Not everybody's going to get along with everybody, especially Kashmiris. We always hate each other in some way, shape, or form. There's so much drama. And, no one's innocent, no one's not innocent. But I held it to myself to at least try and look past that. And if there's anything we can do for our community, I'll try and do it. That's just kind of the approach I take to it.
Thank you for sharing that. I know we all have our experiences, but I think what brings us together is that we all have some sort of, again, like that blood rushing commitment that we should talk about our community, we should talk about our history, and we should be actively preserving it. And I think we all have that in us. So we're all bhai band, high five. Um, but my next question goes to Nisha. Considering you have been the longest standing youth director, I wanted to ask you if you took away any like significant lessons during your tenure, like any skills or experiences you gained to benefit them in your personal or even professional life.
Yeah, a ton. I will just echo a point that Rohit said, which is also something I had to navigate quite a bit as a youth director, is love my Kashmiri people. I think we're great, but there's a saying about us is that we're great leaders, but not great followers. And that definitely is not true, I will say, about the youth as much as it is about the adults. And so it was a lot of cutting through the noise, if I would say it frankly. There's always, oh, why are you not doing this? Why are you not doing that? Always giving a million and one suggestions with no help, right? And so it was always like, oh, you catch a cut on. It's like, well, we are doing a lot of stuff. We're only 10 people. We were really trying to do the most we can, and all of us were in school or working, like, so I think that was the hardest to get around. Was like, I felt like we were meeting weekly, having initiatives, doing newsletters, doing so much communication, and it just like sometimes just didn't feel enough. And I think what I learned was cut through the noise. You're always going to have the adults telling you something or the other, but like really it was our group here plus the folks who actually, like, the youth of the community who like gave us a lot of positivity and helped me realize that we're doing just enough, like, because there's really no one. You also have to realize there's no other group, we have no competitor. Like, if it's not us, like, there is nobody else doing this work, so it's like we're doing something rather than the zero. So it's better than nothing. And so I think that was really helpful. I think a skill that you learn is to become very politically correct. I am a lobbyist during my day job, and so it kind of is very seamless. And so if you think of skill sets, like definitely one that penetrates into my day-to-day life. I will say, like, what Rohit said, like, I think we brought a lot of, during my tenure, as weird as that sounds, we had 2019 was an abrogation of Article 370. The murder happened that Rohit mentioned, Ajay Pandita, in 2020, right after the George Floyd murder. It was just, I think, a week or two after. Article 370 abrogation was like, I feel like the youth just like, that's when we put on our activism lens, because there was like such a big need. I mean, KPs were like in the headlines. I think there was a really controversial article that come out, like Kashmiri pundits, pain is being weaponized. That was put in like a big headline, I think in the New York Times or Washington Post. So there was a lot for us to react to. And so stories like Rohit's Nanu came up at that time. And so like, honestly, every single Kashmiri has a story about either from your grandparents or your parents. I mean, I grew up with all my grandparents because they obviously lost their home in Kashmir. And so that was the time to share it. It was like our moment to be like, no, hear us. And then was Kashmir Files. There's a lot that happened in like a very short amount of time that we were able to capitalize on. And I think that invigorated our followers, but then also just the reps here to be like, hey, did you know this is what happened to my family? And it brought us a little bit closer. Than you're right, Rohit. Before that, it was a lot of like, okay, let's just build a community that Shubhankar was talking about, preserve the culture, preserve the language. We weren't thinking about how to talk about 1990. That was never really the focus for quite some time. It was just like, can we even find a Kashmiri in the country, right? So like when the time was right in 2019, we were prepared, and it really actually I think brought our community closer. And that's what when we were able to like share stories on social media, our following went really up because it was really just like, hey, Rohit, can we talk to your mom on a podcast? It was like, hey, anybody, like, right? We had all these uncles, aunties, everyone had a story that no one was really talking about for a really long time, unless you ask folks. So that it's like almost the application of Article 370 really helped us tell our story. So yeah. But I think talking politically correct, listening to everybody on these calls, like no, there's no idea that's dumb, especially in a community event, which is different than in a work environment. It's like everyone's ideas is coming from a really good place, right?
Yeah.
None of us had a lot of like, I would say territory. So it was like, you have an idea, let's just go with it. Like who, like if it fails, like we'll just stop doing it. So the language idea Shubhankar was talking about, we did language classes. It was me, Shubi, Umeka, Roshni, and then we asked basically the parents. We had Hia's mom on the calls, Roshni's dad on the call, and just be like, let's go through like a curriculum. I mean, that was really like, that's how we thought about how to organize. How do you have meetings? How do you run a meeting? Like, how do you have an agenda? What is the action items? Like, you're taking people's time from their daily life. Like, there was a lot of things that you learn that you can only appreciate now. I'm sure you guys feel the same way too.
Oh yeah, I definitely want to say the growth I've seen of KOA Youth, even in just my like past 3 or 4 years, has been insane and incredible because I feel like every new person who joins, they all have that same like underlying passion that you guys had when you started it. And you talk about language, it's so funny, like even language like languages evolution within KOA Youth, like you guys had structured classes, and now me and Arushi, we're like coming in with that perspective saying we have such a great platform on social media. How can we use it? So our current language team has now launched a Word of the Week series. And so we're trying to be as creative as we can while also preserving the community. So I can see how the youth is kind of also evolving over time. But I wanted to ask Amrita, having spent a few years in Kashmir as a child, you probably don't remember any. And then going to Bangalore and then coming here, how was your Kashmiriyat, I would say? Like, did you always have that passion and then like becoming one of the founding fathers? Like, did you see yourself already having some sort of leadership skills coming into the role?
Now I'm the father. What
Muj,
is this?
sorry, Muji. Maaf कीजिए.
Mebasan एक 10 minuten mas ban babaine nani padban dada mebasan yeah gets it. But thanks for that question. So yeah, when Rohit was speaking, I was also going to say the same thing which Rohit said, that everybody has had like their bit of somebody in their house or themselves. Like I think amongst all of us, I'm the first, um, probably first-hand, witness of the thing. And I have memories from Kashmir, even though I was little, but the ones that scare you or are very heartwarming stay in your memory. And I have very, very, very filled of love memories, kind of love filled memories, like of my being with my nanu in his gireban. I say there was a cat and I was here, and there was like a snowfall thing happening, and that's just a scene, like. And I have a memory of terrorists coming home, and banging, and I have written a poem on it. Actually, Nisha might know this about, because I read it I wrote it and read it both at the DC thing when the 2019 happened. So I have vivid memories of Kashmir, both good and bad. And so, while it doesn't register as a child, when you grow up in Bangalore, you miss the snow that you ate, from the windowsill in Kashmir. And this is very subconscious. So when we got our first refrigerator, which was much later, I was in high school. um, because we could afford it only then. I used to take the ice from the refrigerator and crush it and eat it subconsciously. I don't know why it was happening. And later on, I figured that it was because I missed eating snow. So that is like part of me, right? So I don't think I had to make an effort to be a Kashmiri or like an activist, because growing up, my parents, every like other weekend, we were at a dharna or an activism raising awareness about our situation. Ki, okay, we need reservations, or we need like we were always at that Bangalore, in the Bangalore, there's like this Gandhi statue. We used to be there. So this is how I grew up. So I think there was, it's like just a part of me. And like I said, wherever I go, I try to find out people, because it's very it's a core memory. It's something very who I am. And sometimes now people say, oh, will you go back to Kashmir, and will you settle if you get a chance? And I'm like, wherever I go, I'll take Kashmir with me. I'll be Kashmir until we find a place where we can all be together. Wherever we are Kashmir. So that is one thing. And about KOA Youth, what I learned from them is basically not being too Indian. And I feel like what I'm trying to say is that I feel like I didn't know there was another breed of Kashmiris who were totally like different. And it took me time to understand, and that's why I started Kathpat as a program, because I was like, I don't know who I am, like, dealing with here, because this is totally different as somebody who's grown up born and brought up in America. So I learned a lot about, and I saw how they connect with Kashmir, and how it is in contrast, or how it is the same at the eventually, how it is same, like everybody comes down to Rogan Josh. Sorry, all my answers are about Rogan Josh today. All right.
It's okay. I'm a recent. For those who don't know, Shubhankar, you would be impressed. I have been vegetarian for over a year now. Um, and so I do not miss Rogan Josh. I miss absolutely nothing from our Kashmiri meat delicacies. Um, but on this, yes.
Say that right after Amrita just like hyped up Rogan Josh. Guys, I know I'm mentioning too, but Rogan Josh is
I
great.
have to
And
fix
great.
this.
Mats is
I have
great.
to
Yakni
fix
is
this.
great.
I don't know if you haven't had proper Rogan Josh in your life. Kaliya, yakni, there's something wrong.
I will just
Listen,
share.
listen. I'm so proud that Nisha got married to Pratik, because when I saw Pratik's Instagram handle, it's called Tamak Mas. I was like, yes, right person.
Oh, yeah. Demisha kaldo gatsan agar like he literally will refuse to go places if it's just vegetarian. So he will look at the menu to make sure there's at least one meat option. Like meat is a staple. It's life.
I approve. I approve.
That's the button.
First KOA youth success story, by the way, marriage, and many after.
We're going back to that. I celebrated Thanksgiving 2023 with Nisha and Pratik, and it was on Thursday. And so Pratik had made this insane meat that he had spent the whole day cooking. And so we sit down at the table, and he's like, Arushi, why is there not, like, why is the meat not on your plate? I was like, it's Thursday, like, he was like, you're joking. And so parents, I was like, is it okay if I eat the meat? Pratik was really upset. So I ate it, and that was the first time in my life I intentionally ate meat on a Thursday and broke my Kashmiri rule.
We were very proud of you. Very proud of you.
Very, very life-changing, Arushi. No, but I had to stop meat because I actually, when I went to Jammu after like 10 years, I had Vazka Khana, and it was so oily, and I was eating ninu for every single meal. In the morning, lavas with ninu, in the evening, batta with ninu. So I was like, then like the last day I had like the ultimate food poisoning. And so I was like, you know what? I think this is my goodbye to ninu. But Arushi,
I
now
think sorry, I think Vazwan is very, very rich, and which is not what we cook normally. So
yes.
I think you will be back.
I hope not. But Arushi, I did want to kind of call you out. Rohit, myself, Nisha, we've all grown up in a Kashmiri community. Amrita as well, like she's grown up in a Kashmiri family, Shubhankar as well. But I wanted to ask you, you probably growing up in Alabama only had your parents as like that Kashmiri connect. I don't know if there was was there even closely remotely an Indian community even there. So kind of wanted to ask you, like, how did that shape your experience as a Kashmiri? Did you have a sort of Kashmiriyat? How did that were your parents telling you stories about their time in Kashmir? Because you obviously didn't have any Diwali, Herat, Shivratri, Havans that you would go to annually, but kind of like any sort of memorable moment growing up where you felt that connect to your community even while not having one near you.
I think I would say in the beginning, I didn't really know how to separate my Kashmiri Pandit identity from my Hindu identity because we only had other Hindus around us. So we had maybe a community of 30 to 40 other families in the area, but it was from us all the way to the south of India. So we would go to parties, but they would be more just general, and my Kashmiri identity just existed inside of our house. And so growing up, I didn't really know the house like unique or special what specific holiday was, if it was just something Kashmiri celebrated. But it was definitely made prominent in the household. And my grandmother lived with us my entire life up until she passed away. And so I would definitely say I was Kashmiri in the house. I just didn't know it. But then when I got into high school is probably when my parents started actually telling us stories. Um, and it wasn't as if they never wanted to tell us, but I remember my mom specifically told me the first story I ever learned was the story of my mom's mom sneaking back into their house the day before it was burned to take the trunk of all of the saris and gold that she had been collecting for my mom's wedding. Um, and then she would work for the government, and so the government truck helped her sneak into the house from like a back route, but unfortunately because the truck was seen at the house it was burned the next day. And my mom told me that story, and she was like, you know, now that you're finally old enough to know about this, I want to tell you more stories. And so I think we sat down in our kitchen for 2.5 hours that night, and that was the first story I heard. And then from there, it just started becoming more common to talk about it around the household because my mom felt that I was mature enough to hear about it, but it still only existed in our house. And it wasn't until I went to college and joined KOA Youth that it became more common to just exist as a Kashmiri outside of my household. And whenever I would meet people in college and we would tell where our families were from, they'd be like, "You're Kashmiri?" I'm like, "Yeah." And I was still the only person. So it wasn't until I started really getting involved in KOA that I felt like it was just normal to be Kashmiri. So I would say that it wasn't really until I joined KOA Youth and started attending events and talking to other Kashmiris that I really felt I was Kashmiri fully and not just, within my family.
Thank you for that, Arushi. I kind of want to go back to like something you said about like story sharing. Was story sharing for everyone, whoever wants to take it first? We don't have to go down the line, but was story sharing or storytelling about your parents' time in Kashmir, what happened with them, was that normal? Like, was that a normal conversation within your household, or did you kind of have to dig into them to like get them to say something? Because my personal experience, I had no idea who Girjatiku was until I came. I think there was an account called Riddhi Rebutes or something like that during that kind of went insane during COVID. And I remember reading the post about who Girjatiku was to my father, and I saw his face pale, as if like the biggest secret has come out and I was not supposed to know this. But that wasn't until like 2020, 2021. So for so many years of my life, I knew that something happened. I knew we had gone through a genocide, but I had no idea how directly impacted my family was, how this woman who's his cousin was a motherly figure, how much she played such an important part in my father's family. This storytelling was not common at all for me. So I wanted to know from you guys, like, how important was it to your parents or for you to ask them, like, oh, what happened? Like, how is Kashmir for you? Another question I used to ask my dad, I literally asked him yesterday, like, was there any animosity while growing up, or did this all just happen overnight? Like, was it just that on Jan 19, 1990, you guys realized that it's this bad? Or as a child, did you kind of feel that sort of um like there is Hindu versus Muslim thing that's going on in Kashmir. But my dad's answer was no. Like we were all friends. Like he's like, I used to go to Bitta Karate's gym. I was like, oh, nice to know. But I'll give it to Shubhankar if you want to kick us off.
Sure. Thanks, Siddhi. I think in our household growing up until I got to KOA, I just knew that we were from Kashmir, and my parents would recall mostly fond stories of Kashmir. Like they would say, "Oh, we had a nice farm, and we would eat walnuts, and oh my God, they'd be so tasty, and apple trees, and all of that." Like it was all just sunshine and rainbows, um, with like an undertone of confusion of why did you leave? And then the answer would always be like, "Oh yeah, there was some conflict and this and that." And I think my parents at the time that they left India, which was in 2004, 2005. At that time, it was so recent that it was very repressed in their memory and in their communities where they did not want to talk about it. So they held on to that repression of the story when they left India, and then when they came to the US, as soon as they found KOA, it was like a huge opening up of I have a sea of people that are standing with me that have a shared experience. And I remember we did a series where we would interview parents and then release the videos. And I was shocked. Like when I was interviewing my parents, I was like, how have I not heard this before? Um, and all of those, I think those now it becomes a I want to just say that it's really unfortunate that Jan 1990 is part of our culture and part of our identity. It's like the most unfortunate thing, but the sad truth is that it is. And so I think the fact that now we were so emboldened to speak about it openly, it's the first step to moving past it and re-identifying, refinding what it really means to be Kashmir beyond the fact that we suffered a genocide in 1990. So I think for me, KOA was the biggest opening up of that because the support from the community allowed everyone to start speaking their story and hopefully in 1 or 2 generations move past it to define what it really means to be Kashmiri.
I can jump in. I've thought about this a lot. Personally, I'll tell you, my parents left before 1990, so very similar to Shubhankar, but I know your parents left after 1990. They only talk about fond memories because they got to leave Kashmir on their own terms. And they got to visit whenever they wanted. They didn't have the smear of 1990 memories in their head. They know what happened to their parents, as in my grandparents, who then ultimately had to move to the US. So I heard fond memories from my parents with a tinge of animosity for what happened in 1990. I think there probably was always an undertone that there's a they versus them approach. If I used to ask my parents a lot about what was it like to live with Muslims, what was the tone and tenor, and my parents always said that there was always a difference. Right, like in schools, there was a quota system for how many Kashmiri Pandits could get into medical school for almost like every type of field. If you had a Muslim teacher and you were a Hindu student, there was always a dynamic difference as who gets more discipline. Always the Pandit used to get more discipline than the other. If there was an argument between a Muslim and a Hindu on the streets, the Pandits would always be more concerned about their safety than the other than a Muslim. So there was always that undertone. I always heard that from my parents, and I learned that quite a bit. My grandparents, I heard about what happened, but they also had really good fond memories because they left a little bit later in their life cycle. If you ask Pratik, so Pratik's my husband, his parents, I asked him when we first started talking, like, where was your parents? He knew nothing, like zilch, like nada. And he grew up in Jammu. Like that's like a stone throw away from Kashmir, right? Like nothing. But I for those who have grown up in Jammu or know people who grew up in Jammu, they grew up in like the closest thing to a mini Kashmir. All his friends were Kashmiri. He went to school with Kashmiris. He had neighbors who were Kashmiri. So they got to preserve a little bit of Kashmir in Jammu, which they had to rebuild. But if I asked my in-laws, they were like, we don't talk about it because we remember how we were kicked out. Like, what is there to talk about? It is so traumatizing. It was only actually once they came here and I like asked them questions actively, they were willing to talk about it. But I feel so my point is I think there's this like stratification of people. It's if you left before 1990, you're going to talk about it really well, and you got to leave on your own terms. If you were in Kashmir in 1990 and your whole world turned around, it's really hard, right? Like my in-laws, my father-in-law was 35 at that time. Like that's like your middle of your life to lose everything. And his whole plan was to live in Kashmir for the rest of his life. So if you had that mindset of never living in Kashmir, and then all of a sudden, like your employment goes out the window, your lifeline goes out the window. Then you have people who are like us who have a mixture. So either you've heard about the stories, you're a post 1990 kid, so you only just inherit what's from above. I would say if you're Amrita might differ from me, but like Pratik is like, I never want to go to Kashmir because I know what I saw my parents and my family struggle. Like, why would I go and give money to those people? Right? There's that. He will not go to Kashmir. That's literally what he told me like the second day we started talking. And so I think it just depends like where you're touched and then how much you're interested in learning. He was like, I wasn't really interested because they had Kashmiris all around. So that's why I've learned about this. Like, have you heard? Have you not? How much good you hear? How bad? But I'm sure every one of us has heard when we go to a vacation spot somewhere with our family. How many times have you heard your parents like, "You should Kashmir," and you're like in the Rocky Mountains, and you're like, "Wait a minute, what?"
Denver camp. No, not Denver. Where did we just go? Oh my God, I fully forgot. Estes
Estes
Park.
Park.
Yeah,
Estes
exactly.
Everything. Oh my God. Del Lake.
There's a mountain and a water body. It's Kashmir. Like it could not possibly be any other place. So yeah, that's my thoughts about what you've heard depends on this like kind of like thought process.
Yeah, coming to Estes Park, actually, well, now that you mentioned it, actually, we wanted to do it just before COVID hit, and finally it happens. I'm really happy because I was very excited at that time. I was secretary, and I was like, we need to go to a mountainous place, and we did. So, thanks for that. So it was great. Yeah, so I wanted to just add to what Nisha said. Mm, uh, I, I think I think to a very large extent it comes down to human psychology or psychiatry, and coping with from PTSD and anxiety and basically devastation. Uh, Comes at a price of your own mental health. Um, but that's a luxury, right? Mental health is a luxury when you can think about it and be like, okay, I can go to this person to just heal myself. We were in survival mode after 1990. So when you are in the survival mode, what you do is you repress all your feelings and everything that has happened and try to move on, try to forget. Forgetting is one of the processes that you go through to say, okay, fine, it never happened, so let's be in denial for now so that we can survive. So, like I said, it takes a lot of time to really, and from Jews, we understand that you really start talking about your stories only after 30 years. That's what I'm understanding, and we are. Um, but um, uh, but what Kashmir Files did, I think, and also what 2019 Article 370 did, was that even though I was the first hand, my sister was with me and my mom was with me when the terrorists came home. So all of our memories are the same. But until that point in 2019 and Kashmir File, we never spoke about it to each other. Never. It's amazing. That's because there is no reason. There is no reason until somebody says, okay, fine, we are going to take you to therapy because, hey, you might have like this PTSD. That I had PTSD until like into my adult life, that whenever there was a Jeep next to me, I would think it would blow up every single time, no matter where I was in the world. So like if you don't do like conscious healing, no, you won't get into that story, right? So I think um, I'm really glad that we're all talking about it. And then when I became secretary and we tried to like say, okay, Ajay Pandita died, guys, do something about it. Or this person, we tried to do like programs like we did the DC thing and people spoke about it. And I did not know a lot of things about my dad. Like my mom thought that my dad had he's not going to come back because he went to Kashmir to bring us stuff and he did not return for 2 weeks. And they were going to do his like antim sanskar and all that. Okay, he's been shot or something. So it takes a lot to do that and to speak about it. And I had the same feeling as Pratik, as Nisha mentioned, that I don't want to go to Kashmir. Why should I give money, or I don't feel like going. Why should I go to a place where I am going to go back as a tourist? No, hell no. I lived there. That was my home. Like, and I've been kicked, not just kicked out, I've been dragged out of my house, and people have been, murdered. Uh, why? Why should I live around people who are like that? So, and that was when in just before COVID hit, I was in India. I was in Jammu in my nani's place, and Shakunji was around. Shakunji was the president at that time when I was. So she came home to my nani's place, and we had, of course, Rogan Josh has to come in my answer. But she said, "I'm going to Kashmir tomorrow. Come with me." I said, "No, I'm not coming." And I always have this. I was like, "I'm never going to set foot in Kashmir. I do not want to go." She said, "Look, you're running kind of, part of KOA. You have to know what you're fighting for. You have to know the ground reality." She basically booked my tickets, and she left one day before, and she was there to receive me. I was so afraid. And I mean, I couldn't find a, see, to think of it like you would go with your family, right? For me, going back to Kashmir was so healing, but at the same time, it took me a year and a half to get over it because I was like, I really want a place there because it's my land. It's where like my forefathers were, let's say, fathers were. So I was like, I really want a piece of it. But what I realized is that it was part of me getting over that. Like it's part of like psychology, like healing. It's part of like how to get over your trauma. So now I'm over it, but I'm saying that it takes a lot of time and a lot of energy and a lot of talking to people. Yeah. Sorry, that was a very long answer. You can clip it.
I want to quickly piggyback off of what Amrita and Nisha said because something that I noticed myself is that it didn't really, I didn't really have this thought process till I watched Kashmir Files with my family, but going through something so traumatic like that, you repress it in different ways, and I think that watching Kashmir Files and seeing my mom's exact words were, I've never seen what we went through in front of me like that. Storytelling is one thing, but storytelling with visuals is something different. And so I think for me, Kashmir Files was able to let my family start talking in more detail about stories of what happened, in greater detail than we'd ever talked about before. And I remember asking my mom, why did you never tell us this beforehand? Like, it's so unfair that you wouldn't tell us this. But then I took a step back and I thought to myself, wait, you went through something so traumatizing that I have no idea how to even comprehend. So I can't get mad at you for that. And so I think that also plays a role into just the struggle with trying to share our story because you can't force people to tell about something they went through that was traumatic, but if we don't tell our story, it's not going to get passed on. And so after we left the Kashmir Files theater, there were maybe 5 or 6 families from our hometown who had also made the drive to watch it. And we stood outside the theater for 2 hours, and my parents just told stories to people who've known me my entire life. And they looked at my parents and said, we had no idea you went through this. And so kind of piggyback off of that, I think storytelling is so powerful, but at the same time, it's so difficult because you're forcing people to talk about trauma they went through and probably have never processed in a healthy way. So,
No, yeah, I think Kashmir Files it's had an impact, at least to my non-KP friends as well. Like they went with their families, and I remember what like one of my really good friends, my college roommates, she's like, I went with my family, and like she's like, my dad had to take a second because he's like, I lived in India, and how did I not know this? And so I was like, I asked the same question. Everyone lived in India. Why did no one talk about this? But Rohit, I wanted to take the same question back to you because if I remember correctly, you found out about your Nanu through a Facebook post that your uncle put up. How was that experience for you? Like I if I remember correctly, your mom used to avoid answering what happened. So like story sharing for you, how different was that like compared to all of us here?
So, preemptively, sorry if I choke up. This, what Arushi said actually gave me goosebumps. The whole storytelling visual thing. I never really put it like that. Um, when it comes to storytelling, I did not know a damn thing growing up. All I know was that Kashmir Indiasmans, such as Sonjai, Magara Sekusa wapas gasit ke. I was like, that's fine. Ash India Gasan, Ash Dilla Gasan, go Jammu Gasan, it's fine. I'm just gonna go to India. It never really occurred to me that when I go to India, I never go back home. I go to see other states. So, I was just like dealing with that as a kid. And then when I was 13, up until I was 13, I always asked, Mama, where's your dad? Because thankfully, I have my mom's mom and my dad's parents alive, and knock on wood, stays that way. And I was like, "Where's your dad?" And she go, "Baba, baba nahi pat." So just thoda bemar. I told you later she's a little sick. I was like, "Okay, that's fine." And then when I was in Mumbai in 2012, I was just God gave me Facebook, and so I was just brain rotting myself back then, just scrolling, going there, and I realized that I had friended my uncle a while back, and so I clicked on his post, and the very first thing I saw was shut naman to our martyrs, and I was like, what does this mean? I opened the post, and it was literally my nanu's face in the center, and it was like, we'll never forget what happened to him. And in the post, he described he was cut into pieces, put in a gunny bag, and burn sticks all over him and everything. And I was like, wow, Mama, what happened? Like, why did you tell me? She still didn't say anything. She was like, this happened, and that's all you have to do. So I took it upon myself years down the line. I ignored it actually, and I was like, I will just ask when the time comes. And to this day, Mama has opened up a lot more. Like I think in 2019 when the 370 was repealed, she like a fuse lit in her head and she was like, I'm gonna talk about this as much as I can. And then Vivek Agnihotri came and he interviewed her for the movie and then, tried to incorporate that in the movie. And obviously we all have our own stories to tell. And I feel like that for her, that's when she started storytelling. And even now, for her, it is extremely hard to do so. I can tell there's a lot of resistance with her wanting to do it. But at least she's trying, and I love that she's trying. My dad, whenever we went to watch Kashmir Files, and this is something he refuses to do, he refuses to even try to watch the movie anymore. We got in the theater, he sat down, very 5 seconds in, see someone get shot, got up and left. And he walked back in 10 minutes later, said, I'm gonna try this again. Next scene was her being fed the food, the tomultu coon, bloody rice, and he got up and left again and said, call me in 3 hours, I'm picking you up. And I was like, okay, he's leaving. It never occurred to me until I broke down in that movie multiple times that this is what my mom and dad saw literally every day. I was like, this is disgusting. That happened. And I feel so stupid for ever trying to ask my mom and dad. They should have told me whenever they were ready. And maybe they were never going to get ready. Who knows? But I'm glad there was that movie, there was the threads, there was everything to kind of talk about it. Um, to this day, my dad has the same mindset as Pratik, and he won't ever go to Kashmir. I have tried many times to convince him. I was like, Papa, I have mujhe aklar to go with Kashmir. Main to baas so thoda shanti, even though I've never ever stepped foot in there. I felt at home. He was like, what's the point? It's not my home anymore. It was taken away from me. I'm never gonna step foot. But guys, the minimum shikas call influence. It is what he said. But guys, the influence. What's the point of funding them when they took away everything from us? Mama has a different mindset. She's like, I need to see it. Mich cheshmashai gasun, mich tolmol gasun, mich shankaracharya khasun. And two different approaches and two healthy approaches in their own way. And so I'm glad, sorry I'm going on a little tangent, but I'm glad that we have some sort of storytelling in a way because Amrita's right. It's a way of being cathartic. It's a way of expressing your emotion. And I'm hoping one day I can get my dad to come around and, see what's going on. Because I guess the last thing I'm going to say is, I remember when I went, and I've talked about this multiple times, and I love talking about it, is when I went to Kashmir, and the very last thing we did was we did Chasba, which is where my mom grew up. She said, I wanted to see this, and my dad's mom told her, we're allowed to go there if you don't cry. And so we get to the gully. I saw under the gully, saw under, then she goes, Yitano's darwaz, bon darwaz kehte hain?" And one of her neighbors who recognized her goes, Yitano's darwaz, magar gar is different now. And then the neighbors were talking about, oh, this is brought kawan, and that how they grew up. And then my mom, when we walked into her old home, patas kos chatas path and everything, and she was like, "Itno starti karanye," and it was really nice. She was living. It's like I saw my mom as a kid again. My mom before she had me. So we went downstairs, and then here's the sad part: is we're leaving, and we're getting into the rickshaw, and it's an old Muslim man, 80 years old probably. He's got a topi on and everything, and he saw my mom, and he goes, so usko pronti yeti rozan, and she was like, yeah, khabar kar drabdrais 91, 90 months. When she chun molos na chaman lal cool. She goes, yeah, how to get kishpata. How did you know? Chan molos mol now shaman lal. Then he starts listing every single family member, and he is crying. And the last thing he says to her is, why did they do that to him? And that goes to show that it was much more peaceful back then. This was not something that people wanted to do. That there was, there was just a lot to unravel in that. And my mom and him were crying profusely, just because it was like I think my mom needed that. I think my mom needed to hear that things are getting better, hopefully, and hopefully we can, slowly get past all this that's going on. So I'm glad that there's storytelling.
Yeah,
Thank you for sharing that, Rohit.
absolutely. Yes.
Thanks.
I think one thing I took away from that is that what your father said, like, what home, my dad, I asked him the same thing. I was like, like, how do you define justice? Like, will going back home, is that enough for you guys? He's like, what home? He's like, there is no home there anymore. Like, the home I've created is the home that is here at this point. Like, I feel like every Kashmiri Pandit who has gone through this, their connection with Kashmir after the genocide I think, is pretty different. It varies. Like, your mom wants to go back, folks like our dads probably, or Pratik, like, there is no home in Kashmir for them. So I'd love to see how this kind of, if this sort of perception or this thought will change over time. But like, I know I have been dying to go to Kashmir, and I just know, I feel like the second I'll step foot, I will cry. So I hope no one tells me, if you cry you can't go, because I don't think I'll be able to step into Kashmir without shedding a tear. But I feel like everything we've shared here has been so great. We spoke about our leadership, our growth, some fond memories, being Kashmiri, and all of that good stuff. Let's take it to the end now. We've all held this leadership position. We've all had so much to share. I want to ask everyone here, actually, like, your vision for future youth involvement in preserving KP culture. Like, any suggestions you want to give to our current youth on how to stay connected to their roots while living in this diaspora. And bonus points if you can say it all in Kashmiri. But karna try kya iski mein Kashmir chawari bakwas. This is the only line I can say very well. But I'm hoping the other, and Arushi probably is on the same boat as me. But the other four, if you guys can, I feel like it will. I feel like language is also so important. Story time. I just went to India in November, and we had our layover in Qatar. We took Qatar Airways, obviously. And so I was walking like to board, and all of a sudden I hear Kashmiri, and I just turn around and I smile and I walk up. I was like, oh, I love the language. And I was like, and that guy did not look Kashmiri Pandit at all. I've had so many instances where I see Kashmiri, I mean, I hear Kashmiri, I look at the Kashmiri, and I was like, I can't tell, is this a Kashmiri Pandit? Is there a Kashmiri Muslim? Because I remember coming back from the youth trip in 2022 in New York, and we had just landed in SFO, and this guy is talking in Kashmiri next to me on the phone. And I was like, oh my God, I'm going to introduce myself. I'm going to namaskar mara bachakosher, all of that. Next thing I hear, assalamu alaikum. I was like, this is insane. They sound the same. We look the same. The dialect is the same. Everything is the same. It's just different religions, and all of this because of different religions. But I'm going to give it to you guys. Future, and your vision for future involvement in Kashmiri, if you can, or English.
Well, now I'm gonna forget to spit it in Kashmiri. So I mean مےٚ مطلب چھُ کہِ ییٚلہِ ژٕ کَرٕکھ یہِ شروٗع ییٚلہِ ژٕ چھُکھ یَتھ کٲم کران ییٚلہِ ژٕ چھُ یہِ کٲم کَرُن مےٚ چھُ ایکٹِوِزم کَرُن مےٚ چھُ کَتھ کَرُن کٲشِر منٛز مےٚ چھُ پالٹِکس منٛز اَژُن اَندر ژےٚ چھُ یَتھ کٲم باعث واریاہ کَرُن اِٹس ویری ایٖزی ژٕ ووٚن سون دھرم چھُ ہِنٛدٕ یِم چھِ مُسلمان سہل چھُ کہِ اَسہِ چھُ تَتھ سۭتۍ گژھان جُگاڑ أسۍ چھِ جگڑا گژھان تَتھ سۭتۍ یہِ چھِنہٕ سٲنۍ بہٕ چھُس نہٕ تٔمۍ سُنٛد یار مگر اگر ژٕ کوٚرُکھ تِتھَے کٔنۍ اپروچ کہِ سون فیتھ چھُنہٕ سُہ دے ناٹ دَ سیم فیتھ دین یوٗ لاسٹ آلریڈی اِن آرڈر ٹُو اگر اَسہِ چھُ سون کمنِٹی بَڑُن اَسہِ چھُ سون ہِسٹری ہیٚچھناوُن اگر اَسہِ چھُ سون باشا بڑناوُن وی ہیو ٹُو ڈوٗ آل دیٖز تھِنٛگس اَسہِ ہٮ۪کو نہٕ سُہ دٮ۪ماغس منٛز تھٲیِتھ کہِ اَسہِ اوس تیوٗتاہ گوٚمُت تہٕ اَسہِ چھُ پانہٕ وِکٹم اَسہِ چھُ وی آر مگر وی کین ناٹ اپروچ دِس وِتھ اَ وِکٹم مایِنٛڈ سیٹ وی ہیو ٹُو اپروچ اِٹ ویری کٕلیٖنلی اینڈ وی ہیو ٹُو اپروچ اِٹ لایک وی آر ہِیر ٹُو میک اَ چینٛج وِدآوُٹ بایس وِدآوُٹ جسٹِکشن وِدآوُٹ پریجڈس اَسہِ چھُ کَرُن کٲم تیوٗتاہ جان اَصٕل پٲٹھۍ کہِ لوٗکھ وَنہِ اَسہِ کہِ اَسہِ کیازِ اوس نہٕ پتہ اَسہِ کِتھ کٔنۍ اوس نہٕ پتہ اَسہِ چھِ سۄ مدد کَرُن بس یوٗت ہٮ۪کہٕ بہٕ ؤنِتھ
I'll go next, but I'll stick to English because what I want to say, I don't know all the Kashmiri words. I will say your culture is a very personal identity. Like for me, I'm like Rohit and Shubhankar, and like speaking Kashmiri to me was really important. Because I felt like without that, like, how can I go around saying I'm Kashmiri? That's me. That's a Nisha thing. That is not what other people need, right? For other people, it's the food. Like if you really like Kashmiri food, learn it. Like if that's where your passion is, go learn how to make rogan josh. You can make it for your friends, right? If it's the clothes, go wear a dedra if you want to. Go get your ears pierced. Everyone's touch point to your identity is going to be different inherently. But whatever it is that energizes you, do that. Plug into that. Not everyone's going to be able to learn Kashmiri. It's a hard language, period. It's not easy. If you don't have parents who will not speak to you or don't know how to, it makes it challenging. But if you have grandparents who are living and can, just do it. Just try. You might sound really dumb. That's real. I sounded really dumb. I've come long ways, but you have to start somewhere. Don't be shy because at some point you're not going to have someone to be able to speak it to. My last one, which is a very controversial one, is if you want to go to Kashmir in any part of your life and your parents are still alive and they grew up in Kashmir and they're willing to take you, go when they're living. My dad always wanted to take me to Kashmir and he passed away before we could go. Luckily, my mom was alive. So we were able to go because she could show us. That's probably the best way to not feel like a tourist because my mom took us around as close as you can get as someone who used to live there, right? We went to the Kandaran, we went to her school. She showed us the different gullies. If you don't go with them, you're going to really feel like a tourist. And so I know it's a really touchy topic. I'm not saying if it's not your thing, don't do it. But if you want to go and be like, I want to see where my parents used to live, you can only do that with your parents alive or your grandparents alive to take you there. You will not be able to find that house on your own. I'm not telling you honestly. It took us like at least half an hour with my mom walking through the gullies to get us to the house. There is no address. So please do that if you can. That's my biggest advice. So plug in where whatever is personal to you. If it's language, food, clothes, people, you want to just be around other Kashmiri people, go plug into your local chapter, go to the Diwali, go to the Shivratri functions. If you can't do the Vatuk Puja yourself, go to those things. That's your touch point in a year on a quarterly basis. Like do what suits you. And then if you want to go to Kashmir, do it before your parents pass away.
Great
Back
point.
now.
Yeah, go for it.
Oh, sorry. I can go next. I will also stick to English. I don't want the message to get confused with my tutti putti Kashmiri. I echo completely everything what Nisha said. I think what I want everyone to keep in mind is, and I was speaking to Oshin a while back when we were in KO, and this stuck with me. She said that a lot of people who are born or have grown up in different countries outside of India, their first touch point is being Kashmiri, not Indian, and their second identity is being American. And so the interesting point there is that you don't have a midway tie to being Kashmiri. Like you know, you're a regional, you have a regional culture of Kashmir, but then you have this national culture of being American. And bridging that gap is quite difficult without having that middleman of identifying as Indian. What I would say is I would I would just start by thinking about what really defines a culture. And like Nisha said, it's quite personal, but food, language, traditions, values, very important, and then place. Unfortunately, the feeling of a place as home is very different for us and across a lot of Kashmiris. But the other four, we can really work on that. And think about the fact that what about our values allowed us to bounce back the way our entire community did. It's there's something to be said about what have our parents left us with and what values did they have that we can continue to imbibe into us and future generations that allow us to be successful in new places despite them having started with nothing. So the four things I would say: food, culture, language, and values. Sorry, food, traditions, language, and values. Speak to your parents as much as you can, and I would approach it with as open of a mind as possible, because the truth is that if you feel like you were born in the US and you're like feel 99% American, that 1% that's Kashmiri, it is in your blood, and the more you open up, the more connection you will surprise yourself with feeling. And I would just keep an open mind on what it is about those four aspects that you can continue to imbibe. Time is limited. We're all like very busy as Kashmiri Americans. We're building our lives here, but I personally would just say you will regret it if you don't do it sooner rather than later, because the younger you are, the easier it is to practice eating Kashmiri food, practice speaking the language, practice what are the religious traditions that we have, and then finally the values. Like speak about that. The earlier, the better. And the last thing, my vision is that we move past 1990 as like a defining moment for us, and we find healing within 1, 2 generations where we're able to end up defining our culture as, yes, we went through this extremely traumatic event, but what we came out stronger on the other side, as a united community. And being united is really important. I think as we talked about earlier in this call, like Kashmiris have a tough time getting along, but being united is really, 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 really important.
Okay, so I'm going to be a mother here for real. Um, for when I started KOA Youth, um, for me it was very clear that if our identity has to be preserved in a land so far away from Kashmir, it has to come from the youth, because the elders are busy with different things, raising the youth firstly, and also like their aim is different than than like, hey, what is happening to the youth who are not speaking in Kashmiri, let's say. So they are more like, okay, fine, we need to help out people in the refugee camps, which is also very important, right? So what is happening to the youth here is what I wanted to always focus on. And I was very, very clear. And being a mother now, I'm going to say, I just want everybody to get married to each other. So I want everyone to get married to a Kashmiri. Why I'm saying this is it is very, very hard to get your identity to be preserved, even if you're married Kashmiri, because you're so far away from your home. And if you marry non-Kashmiri, you will have to obviously respect the other culture as well, who you're married into. And that culture is actually most likely stronger than yours because they have a greater presence. It's very easy to be overpowered, and you have to really push back to not push back, but you have to really put extra efforts to, let's say, agar se Vatak Puja che kare. If you're married into another culture, yes, you will be able to do it. And it's great if you're able to do it and bring everybody together. But it's easier if you do it with a spouse whose family also is doing Vatak Puja, who is also like ki hai kah kar rahi hai, main khatrat. Then out of two of you, even if one of you is passionate about it, the culture preserves. It stays on. So same with food and same with language. Now with language, I'm very clear about what I want from KOA youth in the future. One is get married to each other. Another is if you're not at marriage age, make sure and force your parents to speak to you in Kashmiri and don't reply to them unless they make sure that they are, unless you speak in Kashmiri and unless they are speaking in Kashmiri, because that is the only way. And how mion kosher chu Jan kazke mes gaire sirf kosher patkat kara. Agar bu winkenes kach panen daddy mummy san karan ya pani ben se chis karan. Bu sirf kosher patkat karan. Kazke sinis garas maz osi niye ki acha Sahakak Hindi पर तक करित गायरे. You OC nice. I सोच नहीं है गाय. हालांकि ऐसे Bangalore में like it's the same thing, honestly, because we are in a South Indian place where they're speaking in Kannada, right? So and English. So we could speak in English at home. We could have spoken in Hindi at home, but we didn't, and it was never a choice. मैं उस मजाक की कि अच्छा मम्मी कर में हिंदी पढ़ कर क्या मैं छुनी वर्ड तागान या लफ्ज तागान सो ओस निके मगर ब्याह चीज जो सो met bene ki yim namtas mas drai kashir pete timan mas kih lok since colony mas so yiman like my dad and mom, they had friends, Kashmiri friends around the house. So did I. Their kids were also Kashmiri and they used to also speak in Kashmiri at home. So when the kids meet in the evening for games, I says Kashir Patkatkar. And this is in Bangalore and only like let's say 10 families. Magar that's how it preserved. So it's very important that you make an effort. And I'm not saying ki acha in this forum we want to put our points across, but when there is a choice that you have, and this is going back to what Nisha said earlier, when you're going to Kashmir, go with your parents. But when you have your parents here, when you have your family here, who you speak with, whoever you speak with every day, your family, your friends, like I said, I had friends who I spoke with in Kashmiri with. If you have a choice, take it and make that choice and put that effort. It's not going to be easy. Of course, it's not going to be easy, but it will get easy over time. It will. That's the only way to preserve language. It's the only way. There is no way that, see, when you are doing, let's say KOA Youth is doing a program right now, ki acha lafaz karo use. Vocabulary can be built. Sheen, ठीक है, sheen जो vocabulary. मगर मगर एक जबान based grammar. So grammar agar न तो तय गया तो क्या करियो vocabulary. Vocabulary है शुद्ध कुंते वीज, which is winter vocabulary है जान advanced words. क्या ना. मगर अगर न तो तय गया ये so sentences means बनून. So that vocabulary क्या करियो तो. Suchivan sirf language, Suchivan sirf practices, Suchivan daily practices. So you know that and you know, like you have learned, let's say Spanish, you have learned French or whatever in your extra. You know how languages are preserved, and it's very important that you do it in daily basis with your parents who are still alive, and with your friends who are Kashmiri enough to understand that language. So for me, you have only two goals: get married to each other to preserve everything, and the language. Even if you get married, make sure that you speak in Kashmiri to each other. Thank you.
I'm going to keep mine short and sweet. My vision for youth involvement is just get involved somehow. Um, just find someone Kashmiri, KOA Youth, and whether you follow the Instagram account and you just, attend game nights, or you come to Koshikat every now and then, or you come to youth trip or KOA camp, or just your local Zenal events, just get involved somehow and just keep that connection to the culture. And I think that is the best way to just keep youth involved over time. And of course, hopefully that involvement grows, but I think the first step is just getting a connection somehow. Because we have so many youth who are not connected to the community. And the second they learn that we exist, they usually end up wanting to stay more involved.
Thank you, Arushi. That was the last question I had. I mean, I would love to answer this question, but you guys said everything, I would want to. you know, like Amrita's point, at least 3 of us are doing that here. One of us has done it. And so, you know, what Arushi also said, like, if you want to be involved, at least within KOA Youth, like we're doing as much as we can to you know get the youth to meet each other. Come out to these youth trips, you know, like we've gone from, Nisha said 25, we've gone to 25, 30, 40, 50, 60, and we're already seeing 80 people being interested for next year. So these numbers are growing, and these numbers are growing because you guys are interested, because you guys want to come and meet us. I remember, I think it was last year we had we had a lot of new faces. I think Arushi can attest for this because we've been to like the past 3 camps. I mean, sorry, past 3 youth trips. So many new faces, and all of these, like, they were so appalled and so grateful. Like every like 1 hour, there was this one guy coming up to me saying, "Thank you, Siddhi. Thank you so much for doing this. Thank you so much for doing this." Like they were just so excited to be around Kashmiris because we have so much in common. Like, you know, at least in my family, we don't eat meat on Tuesday, Thursdays. You know, literally little things like this, like, oh my God, you don't have soon on Tuesday too? Same. Wow, so happy. So honestly, just reach out there, put yourself out there. Don't be scared. Honestly, I was scared too when I interviewed for KOA Youth. But like it is such a good time to be with people who are not exactly the same, but who have these same cultural roots as you. But I will take this to a wrap. And I'm going to close this off with saying this is a wrap on our finale episode and the 2024 season of Everything Kosher. A heartfelt thank you to all our amazing guests who have shared their stories, wisdom, and experiences with us this year. And of course, a big thank you to you, our listeners, for tuning in and supporting us and being a part of this journey to celebrate and preserve our Kashmiri heritage. Stay tuned for more exciting episodes and conversations in 2025. We can't wait to bring you even more engaging content. Until then, keep listening, keep celebrating, and as always, lasif tifaliv. Thank you guys so much for being here today and taking this Sunday morning / afternoon now from your guys' day. I will see you guys next year, anywhere in any youth trip or any KOA camps. But thank you guys so much for being here.
Thank you,
Thank
Siddhi and
you.
Arushi.
Thank you, Sadhina.
Thank you guys.
Thank you, love you all. Bye.
Guys.